both very familiar with TikTok's moderation and moderation of other apps like Facebook, Instagram, you name it. I get it, I have other political beliefs when it comes to an app that's aimed at kids because I understand that apps like that have billion-dollar marketing teams, and that goes deep into psychology in terms of how crazy you can get with marketing, down to the color, down to the font, all that stuff.
Right.
I have relatives that run social media companies. They have focus groups for all this stuff. I personally do not think it's fair that apps exist at all that target children because a child does not have the mental fortitude to even begin to fight that. And I literally would call that grooming, and it's all for money. But that's
I
just me.
agree.
But with that
It's
being said,
it is unbelievable how much control they have over us. I mean, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, TikTok's run by the Chinese government, of course." And it's like, "Well, I've been deleted off Instagram 3 times in the last 3 months. So tell me how that's all about Chinese censorship too." Like, it's all about censoring the education on natural products and cannabis and like these alternative ways of medicine. And as you're saying, like the 14-year-olds who are also like I have family members who are young and on TikTok. They're like 14 to 16 years old. The dances they're doing are much more provocative than anything I have ever said on the internet or anything I've ever worn or anything I've ever done. So it's clearly targeting a subset of people and trying to prevent us from getting information out there. And it's really unfortunate because it changes so much. Like when I first made my TikTok account, it was not censored to this degree. Like if I tried to make those videos again, they would absolutely get censored and removed. But because it goes through these like fluctuations where sometimes it's okay to say certain words like cannabis and cannabinoid and THC, and then your videos don't get removed, you do really well, you get 500,000 views, awesome. And then the next week you try to say the same thing and it's immediately censored and banned. Like it is ridiculous.
and that and just the double standards. I literally see Snoop Dogg, shout out to Snoop, no hate at all, smoking a blunt on TikTok. Just the other day, there was a big festival and people were jumping into an actual pool full of nugs on TikTok. Nothing. And then you get banned for trying to educate people about what was it, Crohn's?
Yeah,
And
the video that got me banned was I was talking about ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and how the compounds in cannabis can help with this because we have cannabinoid receptors lining our guts and how they can help with the inflammation related to these conditions. And I was citing a peer-reviewed study. Like I was not saying any misinformation. I was literally saying what the study had said. And for some reason, like that video got me banned for an entire week off of that app. It's ridiculous.
that is, and then the problem is too, like you said too, you're just on their shit list. And eventually if they get sick of you, they'll just permanently ban you and they'll find any reason. The reason my main account, the one account that I found you on originally, back when you first started, I was banned because I literally duetted a video of Bella Porch in her bikini. Shout out to Bella Porch, you're rocking it, no hate. But I got banned for nudity permanently. And then I actually got a hold of someone, a human for once on TikTok, and they quoted that back to me. They said, your ban was for nudity, to which I said, I wasn't the one who was nude. Bella Porch with however tens of millions of followers was. But her video is literally still up to this day and has almost 10 million likes on it. And I'm just sitting here like, she literally started on the app appealing to kids with the those bee videos and the facial expressions was literally to target children. And now she's, flaunting herself more confidently. No hate. It's just if your original target audience was children and now you're posing in lingerie and bikinis, isn't there something that should be said about that? Once again, she could make a second account and be just as famous doing all that other
Yeah.
stuff. Just saying.
I can't believe you got a hold of someone at TikTok. Like that is amazing. I've tried for so like I can't even appeal my things anymore. Like I cannot get in contact with someone from TikTok. So they're this
You
like billion trillion dollar company, but who the fuck works there? Like I need to get in contact with someone.
I hate to even say that this is how the measure I go to, but I get my legal teams to help me practice and build an actual case with exhibits, and I present it all to them when you email them on their actual website with support. You can submit files and you can go through and address each of them because they will completely just own ignorance and act like they don't know anything and do an auto like moderation to a robot thing to just get rid of it. And I get it, you know, when you're a huge company, the number one thing that suffers right away is always customer support. But
Right.
I have seen some literal like unspeakable things on that app because you know when you have a big account you start seeing all the brand new viral videos, and sometimes a viral video could be a kid doing a very sexualized dance and you're just like, no, I don't want to see that. And then like I report it and it's just like, why is this still going viral? Like at what point does the CEO, CFO, any of the team members of TikTok actually be held accountable to that? Because I don't see that stuff even on Facebook anymore. You know, Snapchat has been getting run through the legal system because of it. TikTok got sued last week because two kids killed themselves due to a trend. And it's just like,
Ooh.
yeah. And they obviously lost that one, if I recall correctly. And it's just like, at what point do the actual higher ups be held accountable? Because if they aren't, what motive do they have to change?
Yeah, and that also kind of brings up one of my biggest issues with social media is I like genuinely believe it causes much more harm than good. And though like although it's a great education platform, you can reach so many people, you can literally change lives, but like I feel weird being part of social media because I absolutely hate it. Like I hate being on social media, but I know like this information is not out there for free and I want to try to provide that to people, but like at what cost? You're just keeping people on the app, you're keeping people scrolling. I don't believe in the app, I don't believe in the people who run the app, so it's like it's weird that I'm giving my information to them for free and now they have complete control of everything that I put on that app. Like it really makes me feel weird every single day. Like every time I post a video I'm like, ugh, this is cringy, I hate it.
Yeah, it is. That's like the biggest thing I've always told people that are trying to actually grow in the app too is like you have to calculate your mistakes, you know, put a typo in your caption, whatever, so people call it out. Just weird stuff like that. Be cringy. That's what goes viral. But at the same time, what you just said, at what cost? You know, TikTok has been found numerous times by our own government to be siphoning more than the allotted data that you're even signing up to off your phone. And you know, I get it. Tencent, Douyin, the Chinese versions of the app, ByteDance, you know, all these big groups from, you know, foreign countries have a percentage of ownership, and even domestic apps like Snapchat or what's that good one, Discord. They own about 10% of each of those apps. And not to get too globally political, but you know, when you work with a communist government, the government does have a say in what data they want from you. And you know, a child does not have any right to be in any form of contractual obligation with any app, any social media, anyone like that, especially when they don't even know, dude. Like what?
Literally,
But
and after being on the app, like I definitely would not let my kids be on that app. I think it's like the worst place on just anywhere. I just would not let my children be on TikTok. Honestly, like the people who kill themselves too, like that's so sad. And it can literally take over your world. Like it's so easy to keep scrolling. You're rewiring your brain in a pretty toxic way to only be able to pay attention to things for a really short amount of time and only be able to pay attention to things that are like grabbing your attention constantly. It's not healthy, especially for a developing brain like you're talking about, like 14-year-olds. Like and in that case, maybe we make a social media app for adults and then we can actually share real information and it won't be flagged for violating community guidelines, even though it's literal scientific information that we're just relaying the information to the public in a way that can be digested.
yeah, and that's where I was going to try to take this conversation is what are the potential solutions in your opinion? I completely agree. Maybe there needs to just be an app that's literally verified for adults. But, you know, the problem is people don't want to put in the work to actually do the verification. Not to bring up a gross topic, but I'm sure you know the adult YouTube site, that Black and Orange one, PH. They got in
Oh
trouble by
yeah.
the law long ago for failing to verify any of their actors, actresses. And I was a fashion designer for that company, and I still am. And I have a little bit of a window and firsthand experience into what they think as a business, and it's horrible. These billion-dollar brands, and that's what they are. They're owned by a parent company, and that parent company is owned by another company in Cyprus, the country Cyprus, that has
Oh
basically
wow.
no laws in regards to that. So they actually have no uh, no judicial, executive, any sort of legislative oversight to do the right thing. They have zero, zero. So it was public pressure from Visa and MasterCard in those lawsuits that actually got them to finally change. It wasn't the person, it wasn't the people that were being trafficked, it was the money.
It's
So it's
always the
like,
money, man.
yeah, so it's like, I I guess what I'm saying is if anyone sees this or knows anyone that actually wants to start an app and actually have like a morally righteous conscience throughout the whole thing, even if you make it big, like you have supporters. We're here.
You,
We would
you
love
know
you.
what? You know what's kind of like fucked up? I was thinking about going on to Trump social media, the Truth Social or whatever, like almost ironically, because like, can you actually do anything you want on that app? Can you actually say anything you want? I don't know. Like, I was thinking about just putting something up and seeing what happens to see what a, quote, uncensored social media is like. But I mean,
Hmm.
people are always like, okay, well, go to YouTube, go to Twitter, and it's like, well, dude, like I do work, like, and I work 9 to 5 every day. I don't have time to make fucking content for every social media app that has ever existed and just like test the waters and like, and record all my statistics. Like, I'm doing this for free, for fun, just to put information out there. And if it's no longer easy and if it's no longer fun, like a lot of people are going to stop putting information out there. I know a lot of cannabis creators who have just given up because these apps are so censored. And again, it's not just TikTok. Instagram is just as bad. And God forbid you have a product that you actually trying to push. I mean, you will not be able to push anything out there. If you say the word product, if you say the words link in bio, if you say CBD, like they're going to get censored, and it's just so frustrating, especially when it's happening every single day. And like that's the way our company promotes things, is through social media, and we're just constantly knocked down by them.
Yeah, it's just I hate it. It's unfair. If you're already a celebrity, you're fine. But even then, like with the Tommy team, we've had issues too. He had his whole Facebook page taken down. Was it a year ago, year and a half ago? What are we supposed to do about it? There goes all those followers. We just gave up on
Right.
Facebook, and it's just, at what point do the apps change and actually try to support the users? And the reality is they don't care. Instagram literally just released a new how do I word this? Like a speech, a talk about what they're doing for their plan for the next few years. And they literally said, in short terms, I'm going to summarize, we hear what you're saying, we're not going to listen. Because they're moving away from being an image app. They're trying to be more like TikTok. And I get it, they need to compete, but the way they're doing it is they're going to start showing you more of random people's things, so it will be more like a TikTok for you page when you're scrolling through it. Which I get it, they're trying to compete, but at what point do you just make a new app? You have the money, you have the
Well,
resources.
and as you're saying, if somebody made an app that was not censored to this degree, but still was like as engaging as TikTok, it would blow up. Like, it's not just cannabis people that are censored, it's sex workers. Sex workers are censored just as bad. Their accounts are getting removed all the time. And I follow a lot of them. I love their content. I think it's really cool and engaging. And like I also relate to them because, we're not allowed to talk about what we can do. So it's kind of a weird way to like find an alternate community. But I think, that whole community, our whole community, the psychedelic community, like we would all sprint to that new app, as long like we would start building the followers on that app. We just need somebody with money and power to make the app.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the real solution here, is we just need to champion someone, and the vacancy is there, it needs to be filled. But I almost just wonder, at what point does the wrong person invest in that app and then suddenly it starts going downhill again? It's really hard to say. We ended our last conversation and we didn't obviously have time to continue, but I wanted to talk about your some of your favorite cannabinoids, the difference between D8, D9, D10. There's CBN, CBG, all that good stuff. And it'd be cool if we could go over those, because I know a lot of people are always looking that up or talking to someone and not getting accurate information. And I also recognize that scientifically speaking, we don't have all the answers yet. So
Yeah, but we do have a lot of answers. So I would love to talk about this. So like Cannabinoids in general are a class of compounds that are found in the cannabis plant. They're also found in some other sources in nature, but they're best known in the cannabis plant. So, probably the best known one is THC, and that is psychoactive. It makes us feel high, it makes us feel euphoric. It's amazing. We love it. And then we also have CBD, which is, produced in both the hemp and the high THC cannabis plant. And I think we talked about that earlier, so I won't focus on those two. But you mentioned CBN and CBG. So what's really cool about these compounds is they still interact with your endocannabinoid system. They're still interacting with your body. There's still a bunch of like therapeutic potential with these compounds, but they're less psychoactive than THC. So a lot of people will use these compounds if they don't want to feel high. But so I'll first start with CBG. CBG can be amazing for relieving anxiety and relieving pain. A lot of people are using CBG for pain. So then you might say, okay, well, where do I get like CBG? Do I just Google CBG? We talked about hemp varieties previously. You can buy cannabis hemp flower. So it is legal to purchase anywhere in the United States, but it's genetically selected to produce CBG in really high amounts. So you can still smoke it, you can still vape it, you could extract it in vodka at home and make your own tincture. There's ways to make this. You can also buy CBG isolate, which means like just that compound, a pure compound of CBG. You can buy that from reputable sources like Future Compounds. They're a really, really great company. You could buy just that isolate. And then if you already have like a CBD tincture at home, you could just add some of that isolate into that tincture. And then you would have a CBG and a CBD tincture. So there's ways to use that. A lot of, I don't want to say older people, but people who are, 40 and above really like the CBG because it provides that more balanced effect. It usually also has CBD in it if you're buying the flower. So it can really help with inflammation and pain. If you have something like arthritis or other inflammatory conditions, that can be really helpful. And then we can talk about CBN. CBN is really cool because it directly relates to the research that our company is doing. I mentioned when you're smoking weed that's high in THC, some of that THC degrades into CBN when it's lit, when it's like smoked or lit on fire. So when you're smoking, you're already taking in a lot of CBN into your body. Like the compound that's in your bud is not the same as the compounds you're putting into your body. So I mentioned that's kind of why you feel like chill and really relaxed from smoking specifically. But CBN is a degradation product of THC. So if you were to take pure THC, put it in a clear vial, leave it out in this like on your desk that has sunlight and oxygen and all these things exposed to it, over time it's going to degrade into CBN. So you can make it at home, or if you're smoking it, you're already taking it into your body. Or again, you can buy that pure compound from somewhere. A lot of people anecdotally say that CBN helps with sleep. And there are some publications about that, but it's kind of all over the place. So science like sort of backs that up right now, but not fully. But I always say like your own body is the best test for you to like determine if something works or not. So, the N of one yourself, that's still important. But a lot of people are either smoking products before bed or they're buying products that contain CBN because they believe it helps with the sedating and relaxed feeling that helps them get to sleep. And again, CBN acts on the same receptor in your body that THC works on, just less strong. So if you're someone who kind of likes feeling high but doesn't like the overwhelming feeling of THC, definitely try CBN. You can use that. Again, I mentioned like people say that it helps them with sleep, but I would take CBN products during the day all the time and it doesn't make me sleepy. It just makes me feel like a little bit relaxed and not as high as if I were to take a THC product.
I wonder how
There
much of it
are
is like the placebo effect with some of that.
Yeah, I mean, and the placebo effect works though,
Yeah.
if you convince yourself that CBN works to help you sleep and then you take it before bed every night, whether it's that compound or if it's your body like producing compounds because you've convinced it otherwise, that still works. And if you're sleeping, that's the only thing that actually matters. There's also like a lot of other rare and minor compounds in the cannabinoid class that are found in that flower, like CBC, CBL, CBND. You know, there's pretty much an acronym for any of these cannabinoids. And essentially, like the lower abundance that they become, the less research that is done on them. So we know THC and CBD are the most abundant, so the most research has been done on them. So we know a lot less about these minor compounds, but we do know that they're very likely interacting with your endocannabinoid system in some way. And that's another reason why I'm always advocating for these like crude, diverse extracts rather than pure compounds, because they're interacting with your body in a way that we haven't fully quantified, but there's absolutely molecular mechanisms that are happening. And I'm sure we'll divulge all of those within the next 5 to 10 years as far as research studies go.
Hell yeah, I hope so. Shit.
Me too.
Did we ever talk about the main differences between D8, D9, D10?
All right, that was your next question. No, we did not talk about that. So first we'll start like with what the differences are, and then I'll kind of put that into context. So something kind of weird about cannabis is you kind of need to know a little bit of chemistry to really understand the plant and all these like nuances, and especially like these legal loopholes that people are getting around in the cannabis industry. So when we talk about THC, I've mentioned it a bunch of times. We're talking about delta 9 THC. And where that delta 9 comes from is a specific location of a double bond within that compound. So it's a double bond between the 9th and the 10th carbon of that molecule. And that's why it's called delta 9 THC, because delta means double bond. So delta 8 THC just means that that double bond is moved one location away. So it's moved one location earlier in that molecule between the 8th and the 9th carbon, and that's delta 8 THC. Similarly with delta 10 THC, that double bond is moved one position further away, and that's why it's called delta 10 THC. So, you know, why does this matter? Why are there products on the market for all of these things? Again, it's like it's a legal loophole. The way that the cannabis laws were made is it explicitly said that delta 9 THC was the Schedule 1 drug that was illegal and that we can't sell like between state lines, et cetera, et cetera. So what people discovered is that other compounds could exist that were not delta 9 THC, but could still be psychoactive. So although delta 8 THC is found naturally in really low concentrations because it's a breakdown product of delta 9 THC, it's like slightly more stable. So delta 9 will slightly break down to delta 8 and then go to CBN eventually. We could isolate that from the natural product. But what people discovered is that if you take hemp, which is legal in all states, if you take hemp and you isolate the CBD from the hemp, you can expose that CBD to certain laboratory conditions, which mainly are like acid and heat, and the CBD will convert to delta 8 THC. So we can make delta 8 THC from CBD, and now we have this slightly psychoactive compound. It's less psychoactive than the naturally occurring one. It is made synthetically, and we can sell it almost anywhere. I mean, laws have changed now because politicians are like, oh shit, people are getting high from this, and like it's really similar to delta 9 THC. But essentially we're using these synthetic processes, taking a naturally occurring compound, CBD, exposing it to synthetic laboratory conditions and producing either delta 8 or delta 10 THC. These products, in some places, these are the only products people have as cannabis medicine. And that is something we need to talk about, is accessibility. A lot of people only have access to these loophole legal compounds. And if they're still looking for ways to leverage cannabis medicine instead of maybe pharmaceuticals or something else, then that is available to them, and that's good. But what we need to be a little weary of is these products aren't regulated at all, like at all. So these products could still have residual solvents from that synthesis. They could have the acid that's still present that was used to make those compounds. And what we need to be really, really careful of when we're purchasing Delta 8 and Delta 10 products is to make sure they're pure and that they were made by people who know what they're doing. So, typically we look at the certificate of analysis to determine that. But like, unfortunately, like everything, some of these are fabricated too. Some of these COAs are wrong. But you essentially just try to find a really reputable company that's making a pure product. And if you can find that, then Delta 8 products can be safe. But if you're not finding that, as I mentioned, like, let's say we're working with the natural product again. We're extracting the bud from the plant and we're trying to extract just Delta 9 THC. If I have some residual products from that, those residual things are all going to be naturally occurring compounds that are found in that plant, right? So they're probably not going to be that dangerous to us. But with synthetic products, those extra things that are showing up that are not Delta 8 THC, we have no idea what those are. They could be dangerous compounds because they're produced in a laboratory. They might not be very related to Delta 8 THC. They could be just a completely different compound that is present in your product that you're putting into your body, and that could cause more harm than good. So I don't want to like fear monger, but there are some people doing sketchy science out there. And when the natural product is available, always buy the natural product. Always. Even if the Delta 8's cheaper, try to aim for the natural product because it's made by the plant, the best organic chemist in the world. That plant is making safe compounds that are literally like compatible with other biological systems. And if you have to buy Delta 8 or Delta 10 synthetic products, and yes, they are all made synthetically in a laboratory, if you have to buy those, maybe spend a little extra money for the one that's made by someone who knows what they're doing and provides all that information and is very transparent with the process and exactly what's in their final product. That would be the only advice I would give for the synthetics. But I personally don't dabble in the synthetics because I am lucky enough to have access to the natural medicine.
That was a lot of good info. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. If you're balling on a budget, just do what you can to take care of your body.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah, I didn't even realize that D8 was synthetic. That's
So I want to like, I'm trying not to get too political in my life because again, I hate politics, but I will like when
it's a
I have to.
necessary evil.
Yeah, I will when I have to, but like I want to create a law that says that mandatory has to say on the packaging that it's synthetic because nobody knows that these are synthetic products. It's just like it'll say like in a small font Delta 8 and then THC. So everyone's like going to the gas station. They're like, oh, holy shit, there's THC available in gummies in this state where THC is illegal. And like, they're not asking questions because they want to buy the product. So I think we should have to put it on the package so that consumers know what they're putting in their body. Because a lot of cannabis consumers are people who like natural products and who like other natural products and they want to use the natural product and they're just getting fooled by marketing and it's not their fault. It's the marketer. It's
Oh yeah.
their fault. They're putting it out there in such a deceiving way.
The laws in our country are so corrupt. There's no other way to put it. My mother taught me at a young age that you have to read every label on everything that you buy at the grocery market because they've lobbied the government so well to, you could add sugar at a certain step in the process so it's not additional sugar and if you add it at a different step and it's just like stupid shit. Or you don't have to label something with gluten in it. You might have celiacs, but now you're gonna get fucked over because someone didn't do a label right and they didn't have the obligation to. And it's just I've firsthand seen people mess up their bodies all because of laws and loopholes being followed. And it's wrong. It's morally wrong. So that'd be cool. And I'd like to add on that quick. If you ever want to join me, I do plan to like have some more meetings with politicians. If you ever want to like sit in and actually speak to them as a doctor, someone who actually firsthand knows the research and would actually have a lot more sway in all of this. So that might be beneficial.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. And, our company is based out of Beverly, Massachusetts. And Miyabi lives in Salem. So we're kind of getting closer
wow.
with the politicians in Salem. And something that we're trying to change a CBD vape product from using our process, like our smoke and all process.
Oh, excuse me.
And
You just froze a little bit. You froze
oh,
at something.
what can wait, did I say we're trying to make a vape product?
That's probably the part you cut out at. All I heard was
Okay, okay.
something, and you were
Okay.
talking about Miyabi.
Okay, so we are talking to the politicians in this area and like trying to make a change because we make a vape product that we can't sell right now anywhere because it's so hard to sell vape products. But the reason we can't sell our vape product in Salem is because terpenes are classified as like flavor additives in the realm of tobacco. Like we're all, yeah, like don't get me started on this, but for some reason, we can't sell any of our products because the laws involving tobacco like prevent us from doing it, even though we're not working with tobacco and we're working with hemp derived terpenes. And terpenes are legal in every state, like they are legal to work with. And they're not additives, they're just in our product because we work with the hemp plant. Like it is just a lack of information on the politicians who make these laws and regulations of not knowing anything about natural products, specifically in the realms of tobacco and cannabis, and not knowing where to draw that line. Like, I do agree that some tobacco products maybe shouldn't have an excess of certain flavors because they can be a little more addictive. But that's not where we're working. We're working on a completely different plant that actually helps people with addiction issues. So it's just, it's so ass backwards, but we are trying to get involved there. We're talking to politicians, we're writing letters, we're getting involved to at least make the change that we can where like in our area where the regulations just seem so backwards. And then we're making a list of like things we want to see change, and essentially we're just working down the list with them, like, hey, like everything still says marijuana, can we maybe change this to cannabis? Like that seems like an easy fix maybe for
Yeah.
someone.
There are some different opinions on that I could get into, but it's not a big deal. I just, I know some African American friends of mine that actually champion the actual term of marijuana because at this point they just want to own it.
Sure,
And
yeah.
I get that.
I get
Uh,
that too. It's kind of like the word stoner. Everyone thinks it's a terrible word. I'm like, I'm absolutely a stoner, like 100% a stoner. And I'll scream that from a rooftop. Like I'm proud to be a stoner. I've been a stoner since I was 14 and it's worked out well. So,
One of my followers had a funny little bio in his TikTok that I always loved, and it was just like, "Is stoner a good subclass of nerd? Like, is that allowed?" I'm just like,
I love
yes,
that.
yes, it is. There's a lot of us. We just don't openly talk about it usually, but I'm glad more people are. What are some signs and what are some things people can do if they do feel like they're starting to get too lost in the sauce? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think some signs are definitely like if you can't go anywhere or do anything without getting like violently high, that probably is an issue.
yeah,
Um so I always recommend, like, I never tell people to take full-blown tolerance breaks because I mentioned earlier, like I think it's really stressful on your body. But if you can start like recording how much cannabis you're using on your day to day, and then say, okay, well, this is the amount that I'm using, and then set a goal to like how much you're trying to get to, and then work it out between a week or 2 weeks and just slowly start decreasing the amount of cannabis you're using. And, I talk about hemp a lot, but if you're kind of addicted to the motion of like smoking a joint, smoking a bong, smoking a bowl, like start just cutting that cannabis with hemp weed, and you're going to be decreasing the amount of THC, and then maybe it'll help with the actual like physical addiction of smoking. And then you can kind of work towards the mental addiction too. You mentioned a really good point, like therapy. There are like, if you're trying to hide or escape from things in your life and you're using cannabis to do that, that's not really a sustainable way of using anything. So seeking out something that is sustainable, like going to therapy once or twice a week, talking, like hanging out with your friends and just talking to them, finding ways that you can actually deal with the things in your life that are stressing you out to the point that you need to constantly use cannabis. These are things you should definitely do to start because you can use cannabis every day, and that is a sustainable approach. But using cannabis, every 10 minutes every day forever, that's not sustainable for anyone to do. And we also mentioned like end of life care. That's different. That's completely different. At that point, medicate however makes you happy. But if you're not in that situation, definitely try to look for more ways to deal with the issues that are happening in your life, and then you can use cannabis in a more intentional way in certain situations instead of all situations. But it can be addictive. It definitely can be. There are some biochemical things happening in our body that can, like, they're not as severe as something like fentanyl or heroin or that kind of addiction. That's different addiction. But there are some biochemical processes in your body that can facilitate that type of addiction. And if you're constantly feeding that, it definitely can get worse. And if you feel that coming along, it's going to be easier to deal with that now than dealing with that in 2 months or 6 months or 2 years. Like, definitely try to deal with it the second that you think, okay, I might have an issue. I might have a relationship issue with this plant, and I should try to solve that.
Oh yeah. For all the people listening, there is a fine, fine line between medicinal use, recreational use, and then just being a functioning addict. And a lot of addiction really does boil down to your brain chemistry. And when I'm speaking to auditoriums full of people about this, you always have to remember there's a lot of normal things you can do in life, like exercise, making sure you're eating right, that can help you and your brain chemistry and help you like normalize yourself and be more cognitively just neurotypical. And a lot of people who are already falling into like overindulging in substances usually aren't taking care of their self in other ways. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
call people out or make you look bad. No hate. Just, I've noticed a lot of people is like, yeah, I wake up and bake, but then I forget to eat. It's like, well, there you have it.
No, I love that you brought up exercise, because, when you're exercising, you are releasing more of your endocannabinoids, the compounds in your body that interact with your endocannabinoid system and make you feel that like natural high. So you can leverage your own endocannabinoid system in ways that don't involve using the plant, using cannabis. So you mentioned exercise. That's a great example. You're releasing those endocannabinoids. Meditation is another really good one. Just learning to meditate, and learning to meditate actually takes a lot of time. It's not something you pick up in a day. It's really hard. But if you can practice that too, that's another way to leverage your endocannabinoid system. And then if you're really into natural products, there are other natural products that can help with either staying focused or stress. Like, we talk about kratom or kratom. That's another great one that can help with like analgesic effects and helping with addiction. There's kava kava. That's another plant that can help you with focus. There's a lot of plant medicine beyond just cannabis that can help with a variety of these things. So maybe if you are taking some sort of tolerance break, you start looking into other natural products and how those could help you, because they are still these like really crude natural products that have all these different compounds. They're very non-pharmaceutical, and they can still give you the effects that you're looking for like your everyday life and finding balance.
What's your opinion on the glamorization of like nicotine use and alcohol in our society? Because you brought up a few good natural plants that I've personally tried myself and I could vouch for, if you're using it responsibly with intention and, keeping track of that. But, it's crazy that, like, for instance, we have like a Super Bowl and I had friends who literally paid to have a CBD ad and they pulled it. But then you
Oof.
have 10 million minutes worth of alcohol binging, even on TikTok. There was a literal trend last year during the winter of going skiing while you're drinking in the
Yeah.
ski lift. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, come on. I literally have had friends make horrible life altering mistakes while they're going downhill because they do a jump and they hit a tree. Now their leg's gone. And it's just like, are we really trying to encourage people to do this while inebriated, even buzzed? Like
Yeah, no, I completely agree that that is problematic, specifically the glamorization of everything. I mean, and also the like combination. How many people do you see with a beer and their jewel, like both in the same hand? So I don't think they should be glamorized, but I try really hard not to like hate too hard on the alcohol industry. Not just, I do drink, but I don't drink a lot. But not just that I drink, but the cannabis industry and stoners have been targeted for so long that I just feel weird just targeting alcohol people because I just feel like I'm them, like I'm just doing
That
what
is
they did to
fair.
us.
That is
So
fair.
I try not to like bash on them too hard, but I agree that there's this crazy, like we're living in a crazy world. Well, we know that thousands of people die every year from alcohol, and it's clearly more dangerous to your body. It works in your body as a literal poison, right? Like it's not interacting with a specific system that controls specific things like cannabis does. It's just acting like everywhere, and it can be relaxing to you, but it is absolutely a poison at certain like concentrations, and we usually see people consuming in those concentrations. So I mean, it is weird. We are like advocating for people to poison themselves, but we can't talk about the medical uses of plant medicine. So, and I think nicotine, I mentioned, I think it's like the most addictive substance on earth. And it's really hard to get off of. And also, by the way, when you try to stop drinking alcohol, if you are addicted to alcohol and you try to stop drinking, you can die from those withdrawal symptoms. You can die from like stopping drinking alcohol. That is a
Yep.
problem. And same thing with nicotine. I mean, you can't die, but if you've seen somebody in nicotine withdrawal, like you can tell how powerful that substance is. And the fact that we have so many commercials and young people advocating, even though they might not think that they're advocating, if you have a jewel like this in every single, TikTok that you make, you're kind of advocating for that. Like that's free advertisement for nicotine, big tobacco in your hand in every single video. So it's extremely problematic. And the fact that we can't show a joint in our videos, I mean, it's a problem. But I don't know what we do about that because what can we do about anything on social media?
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's just crazy because it's like I've firsthand have known a lot of people that have literally destroyed their lives due to alcoholism or even harder substances that were prescribed to him, like opiates. You know, my father's that age where he's gone to a funeral, numerous funerals every year now, due to his friend who got hooked on heroin because their prescription stopped after they broke their leg working or something. And I know many people who have ended up brain dead on a hospital bed because of alcoholism. They literally get out of the hospital unable to walk with a walker, pawn the walker for money to get alcohol again. And I know people that are wheelchair ridden, unable to speak due to alcohol. And it's just like, once again, I'm not hating responsible use. I drink too, but there's that fine line. And it's, if you're a young person watching this, it's that age between like teenage years to mid 30s where you're going to see your friends that are into alcohol either use it responsibly or they're going to slowly slip from that fun alcoholic at the party to someone who might be getting a little too emotional, too sad, too angry, too depressed, whatever you have it, but they're going to start losing themselves. So if you can help them and not educate
Yeah.
them before then, please do so.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely like be that guy that intervenes. Like I'm always the one who's like will say something in any situation because if I saw that person somehow like die or hurt themselves and years later and I didn't say something, like that's something you have to live with too. And it's so much easier. Like the earlier you can intervene, the easier it's going to be for that person to deal with that. It's only going to get harder. So definitely bring it up whenever you can. It might take more than you, it might take their family, it might take a group of friends, but they'll listen eventually, or at least hopefully.
Hopefully. And also remember, don't let your friends drive buzzed. I come from a place in my state where so many people, if they didn't do anything with their life and plan out their life, they just end up at the bar every day in their hometown. They never left it, and they all have multiple DWIs. And it's really easy to not drive drunk,
Yeah.
you know? So, and I get it. It's not the same with weed, but a lot of politicians want to police weed the same way. But every stoner I know somehow knows when they're too high to drive.
Yeah.
Versus every alcoholic person I know, it's like, yo, bro, I will wrestle you right now to take your keys from you.
Yeah.
Like, it's just different. What's the science talking about in terms of cannabis use on the developing adolescent brain? A lot of politicians bring that up. I've read very conflicting scientific journals on the subject. Some are saying that have been sponsored by various governments, even saying that they haven't found any noticeable change in an adolescent brain on cannabis. But I mean, that there's a lot of variables in there. So, one person isn't the same as the next. So I was just wondering if you maybe have read anything about that or have heard anything yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So, you preface this perfectly with like, there's a lot of conflicting data on this, but what we do know and what the big concern is with younger people using cannabis is that your endocannabinoid system is still like developing in some ways. So, if you were to expose that brain, and this is the same thing with like breastfeeding mothers and pregnant people, like that's the same thing. It's like the baby or the adolescent is still developing their endocannabinoid system. So if we're exposing that child or that person to high levels of THC or other cannabinoids in the plant that can interfere with that system and maybe change the way that it develops, like that might be specifically detrimental. But with adolescents, and this is not with babies, this is with adolescents, one of the main concerns is with schizophrenia or other like psychosis related conditions, because this is another thing that's there's such conflicting information and there's no conclusions. But what we think is happening is that if certain people have a genetic predisposition for these conditions like schizophrenia, if you're using high THC cannabis at a young age, it can essentially like initiate those symptoms earlier than what they would normally present themselves later in life. So if the normal average for someone presenting the symptoms of schizophrenia were 25 or 26 years old, and if someone started using cannabis at 15 years old, maybe they'd start having those symptoms at 17 years old instead of 25 years old. So it likely is still like, we know schizophrenia has a genetic component of it. So it's not like anybody out there who uses cannabis at 14 years old is going to develop schizophrenia. That is not the case. But if you're somebody who does have family members that suffer from these mental health conditions, definitely be weary of using high THC cannabis products at younger ages, because I mean, it does in some ways, quote, opens up your brain, kind of like psychedelics. It allows these connections in your brain that aren't normally talking. So we definitely want to be careful of opening those too much for a certain subset of people, because if we can, put that off as long as we can, or just prevent it in general from a psychotic break, then that is the most responsible thing we can do. So I will say, for any teenagers out there like looking to try cannabis, I mentioned that I started using cannabis at 14 years old. I'm not suggesting that is the right age to use cannabis, but if you are going to start using it, stay away from the high THC products. Use flower, use products that have CBD and THC in it. That CBD can literally help protect your brain from being overwhelmed and experiencing some of these adverse effects from high THC cannabis. So I know, like, specifically at that age, you can't just pop into a dispensary and ask the bud tender like what they got going on that day. But like, or just use less. Like, if you can, buy some hemp flower, as I've mentioned a million times. If you can't control the flower that you can get, buy some hemp flower, grind it up with that high THC flower, and now you have a more diverse product that can help protect your brain. But just remember, like, you are still developing at that age. Your brain is still very pliable, and we don't want to mold it in a way that's going to be detrimental in later years. So use responsibly. Stay away from carts. I'm just going to put that out there. Just stay away if you can. And yeah, try to stick with flower if you can, because it is going to protect your brain better than some of these other products.
Yeah, and adding on to what you said, talk to your parents if they're willing to talk to you. I'm adopted. I waited until I was 19 because I'm adopted. I didn't know what I was facing. But here's the other
Totally.
thing is I wish I would have smoked when I was 14 and replaced all my ADHD meds with it, because cannabis can act as a stimulant, and stimulants are usually the main medicine prescribed for ADHD. And it helped me, it helps a lot of other people, but you need to talk to your parents and see what you might be facing down the line, because if you are have a predisposition to schizophrenia, you trust me, you don't want to trigger that one early. And that's the biggest thing I've read about too, is some people feel like it's made it worse or triggered it earlier. And if that is you, take care of yourself.
take care of yourself, talk to your parents if they're willing. If they're not willing, try to find someone older than you that you can talk to. Just somebody with some experience,
Yeah.
that can maybe help you like walk through it. Because yeah, obviously not every parent's like cool with their kids using cannabis products. But there, I'm sure you can find somebody that you trust that you can talk to about it. So open up the conversation. Don't smoke alone at night in your house when you're 14 years old. Like definitely, experiment with other people too. So you make sure it's like a safe environment, and don't drive, and just be careful.
Yeah, maybe you have an uncle or grandparent that you could talk to, even that's in your family lineage. And if you can smoke in your parents' house or with someone that you trust, and even if you need to, if you're in an area that's sketchy, if you can, test strips are super easy to get online. You know, test your stuff. I'm not saying everything's bad. I don't want to scare people, but a lot of people don't know what they're getting, and it's usually worse in a more rural area, more backwoods area. So please,
Yeah.
please be safe, But I want to add on to this too is, do you know anything about people who are pregnant that use? I've had people that have told me that their doctor is okay with their cannabis use while they're pregnant, but
I
no,
personally
I
think
obviously I'm not going to name names or health organizations because
this
that
this
that's
is
sus.
a this is a little bit of a longer conversation. I think we should save this one for when we talk next time, just so I'm
Okay.
not rushing it. But I actually just did an interview about this because everyone asked me about it, and I'm like, I can't put my opinion out there, but I kind of will.